Hey guys, and welcome back to my Enigma Syndrome series. If you have not seen, at the very least, part 1, please go do that. But there are a number of episodes that you can watch before this one that would make a lot of sense to watch first. So I'll include the link to the playlist down below, watch those, and then come back to this one. This video is about Enigma Syndrome geckos and shedding. Geckos with Enigma Syndrome, as you saw in the first one, hopefully you watched it, have issues with balancing and with coordinating movements. So something that's really important to the health and well-being of any leopard gecko is their ability to shed. And geckos with severe Enigma Syndrome typically have a lot of struggles with this. It's my experience with Sam, Gilly, and Shireen, who were featured in episode 4, I think it was. All of them have severe Enigma Syndrome, and as a result, they have difficulty shedding. There are a number of reasons why this might be possible. It might just be because they can't pull the shed off, because they can't move their head where they're meaning to because of their neurological disorder. And it also might be because they don't like their humid hides. The sensation of having the moisture touch them causes them to stress out and circle. I think that naturally they stay out of their humid hide because it stresses them out, and then this causes the shed to be a little bit more difficult to remove. I have noticed on occasions Sam and Gilly will use theirs. I have never seen Shireen use hers, ever. And I've tried multiple different humid hides with all 3 of those geckos. I think naturally it just is very stressful for them. So I keep track of when they shed, and then every time I see them start to look like they're going to shed, they get that real pale look to them, I will make sure that I get the stuck shed off of their feet. Typically Gilly only has stuck shed on her toes, but Sam will get it on her face, she'll get it on her underside, her tail, she'll get it on her feet, and Shireen will typically only have 1 or 2 toes. Shireen is my easiest in terms of stuck shed Enigma Syndrome geckos, so by no means is she easy, but she's easier than Sam and Gilly. Recently, after I upgraded the gecko bookshelves and moved to heat tape, Sam and Gilly started using their humid hide, so I'm really impressed by the fact that Gilly only had 2 feet that had stuck shed on them. So it was really great. I was really happy. I had very minimal toe shed to remove. But anyway, this video is about how to do that, how to interact with your Enigma Syndrome gecko when there is stuck shed to be removed. Now the reason it's important to remove stuck shed is because whatever part of the body it's on, whether it be the tail tip or toe tips or the legs, it can restrict blood flow to those areas and they will effectively die and then fall off. And not only that, but it can cause rot, whether it be tail rot or toe rot. But what will happen is the dead limb will actually infect the rest of the healthy limb and the black will spread, and in those situations amputation is absolutely necessary. You have to go to a vet to have it amputated. But fortunately I've never had to do this. When I got Sam and Gilly and Shireen, they all had stuck shed. I was able to get all of Shireen's off. She didn't lose any toes. I was able to get all of Gilly's off. She didn't lose any toes. But when it came to Sam, she lost the very tip of 1 toe and half of another for shed that I just could not get off. I mean, they had layers and layers of stuck shed. It was horrific. It was terrible, and I wish I had been more experienced at the time that I got Sam and Gilly with stuck shed and with Enigma Syndrome geckos, but they were the most severe geckos I ever had with ES, so I had no way of getting used to it. So that's why I'm really thrilled and excited to share with you today how I was able to get the stuck shed off of them and how I continue to do so today, because I wish I had had that resource to turn to. I didn't know anybody who kept Enigma Syndrome geckos, and when I googled things about them, a lot of times it was not helpful. So first and foremost, I want to say that if your gecko is having a hard time shedding and you don't know that it's an enigma, please don't call it an enigma. This is strictly for geckos that have Enigma Syndrome. If you are not told that your gecko was an enigma, it probably isn't, and therefore it does not have Enigma Syndrome. Now, I'm not saying that your gecko doesn't have stuck shed for another reason. If you're not offering a humid hide, if you're using a loose substrate, if you are using an overhead heater such as like a bulb or a ceramic heat emitter, then you're going to have a lot of moisture problems in your enclosure, and your gecko is probably going to have a hard time shedding. There are a number of reasons why your gecko could have a hard time shedding, but I am only talking about Enigma Syndrome and severe Enigma Syndrome actually in this video. Please do not label your gecko as having Enigma Syndrome if it has a hard time shedding. That is not the only symptom, and if your gecko is not an enigma, you cannot call it Enigma Syndrome. Now that that's out of the way, we can keep going. So the best way to remove stuck shed is to do it immediately after each shed. Don't let it build up. It will become way more difficult, and the likelihood of your gecko losing a toe or tail tip is much more likely. There are two main factors of removing stuck shed, and that would be actually getting the stuck shed off in a timely manner, and it would be keeping stress to a minimum, because stress in Enigma syndrome geckos makes their symptoms appear worse and makes them oftentimes death roll or circle really hard. So what you want to do is to keep stress to a minimum while getting the actual shed off. The best way I have found to do this is not what you would do with typical geckos. Typical geckos, you could just put them in a shallow little warm water bath, and then after a couple minutes you can pull the shed right off. When you do that with an Enigma, oh my god, it is a nightmare. I did not know this going into it with Sam and Gilly I think it was 2 years ago now. Yeah, it was 2 years ago. It was 2016. So in August of 2016, when I got them, and between August and September, I was trying to get stuck shed off their toes. It took so long. Like, I would get one layer off and there'd still be another one. I don't know how many layers they have, but there were a lot. So I would soak them for upwards of 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, and in this warm water, just, you know, a small container. You don't want something big. And the problem was they would start death rolling as soon as they hit the water, and they were like, you know, putting their heads underneath the water, and eventually it caused Gilly to have a seizure. Gilly literally had a seizure from the stress of being put in the water. So if your gecko has Enigma syndrome, I do not recommend this method at all. If your gecko does not have Enigma syndrome and you need to remove stuck shed, then that method is fine and dandy, because geckos will not freak out like that unless they have Enigma syndrome or another neurological disorder, but that's beside the point. So what I tend to do actually is take their humid hide, and I'll just put like a nice low level of water on top of their paper towel, and then I will start lightly spraying their toes with like the little jet sprayer. So we have this sprayer that's like for our crested geckos, and you can twist the nozzle to make it spray out really fine, or like a jet. And I'll turn the jet on, but I won't like pump it a lot, because then it'll come out really fast. So it'll just be this like little light stream of water, and I'll put that over their toes or the area that needs to have shed removed while they're standing in their humid hide getting some of the moisture from below. So that's how I soften their toes, and I'll only keep them in there for a couple of minutes doing this, and then I will take them out, put them in my hand, and I'll make sure I'm sitting on the ground, because they wig out when you pull on their toes. And you're not pulling on their toes, you're pulling on the shed, but they wig out. So what you should do is take your fingers, and if you have fingernails, even better, because you can grab real fine like, but take the toe and just hold the gecko in one hand. It's actually really great if you hold your thumb over the gecko so it can't really go anywhere, because they will try to dart and circle out of your hand and everything. But just gently roll down the toe like this, like this. Say this was the gecko's toe, you want to take your fingers and roll down the toe. The shed will literally just roll off. It'll just come right off. And if it's more stuck, because like say you just got a rescue gecko and it's got a lot of layers added up, this will take a long time. If your gecko has layers on layers on layers, then you're really out of options, because simply going like this isn't going to get it off. So you can use some pointed tweezers, and you can gently pull off like little pieces at a time, or you can just use it to finely slice the top layer. And then once you get a couple layers off, it does get easier and easier, but like when it's really built up, oh, it's terrible. And that's why you don't want to let it get built up. If you have a gecko and right now there's no stuck shed on their toes, make sure that during their next shed, after the shed, you get everything off, because you really don't want to let it build up. It's terrible. Now, this process shouldn't take more than a few minutes, especially if you're keeping up on it every single shed that your Enigma syndrome gecko has. It will be stressful for them, and it will be a little bit stressful for you, because obviously you don't want to stress them out. It makes me upset every time. Like, I just sit there and talk to them. Sam does a way worse job. Like, Gilly pretty much just sits there and let me take it off. Sam literally just freaks out. And I actually have some video clips I will include in this video where I show Sam and Gilly getting their stuck shed removed. So the way I remove shed on Sam and Gilly and my other Enigma who can't shed herself, Shireen, is to place them on top of their humid hide, or in a humid hide that has just a little bit of paper towel. I have tried placing them in just water, and they death roll, each of them, every time. So that's really dangerous. This is Gilly, and as you can see, she's a little bit stressed out by being in the water, which is making her more active. But it's important for her to get as much of the shed wet as possible, because once it's wet, if it's a fresh shed and there's only one layer, it slides right off like a glove.
And the important thing is like not to really like over pull. Like look, you just tug a little bit and it'll come right off. It's kind of hard to do while holding the camera in my hand. Usually I hold her in one hand, and then with my thumb and my index finger I just roll it off. Like I just keep my fingers a little wet and just peel the shed right off. Important thing is not to go too hard and not to like pull on their arms. See, there's a little toe just came off right there. How easy that was. I know, sweetheart. They get really stressed during this time. See, you can see she's wagging her head back and forth. Alright, I'm going to take this shed off of her. It's hard for me to do on camera, so I'll see if I can focus it. One important thing to notice is how pale that their toes are. A lot of Enigmas have a lot of white, and so their toes can be really pale. It's not focusing, but you can see how pale the color is. And it's hard to tell if they're stuck shed or not due to the fact that their toes are so pale. But she's all done. Now it's her sister's turn. It's also important to note that you have to take the shed off before they shed again, as having more than one layer of stuck shed can be really difficult to get off, and if you don't get the stuck shed off, it will result in lost toes. I feel like you can see the little shed that just came off of Gilly. Putting her in the water stresses her out too. And the goal is just to keep them in this for a little bit. Both Sam and Gilly and Shireen, when they arrived from shipping, had stuck shed on their feet, and that was the most problematic shed I think I've had them, because it was already multiple layers stuck that I had to get off. And Sam actually lost a toe and a half. Like she lost like the edge of a toe right here, and then she lost like the very, very tip of another toe. And then one thing that I do is I just spray a little bit of water, just a couple, my difficult one. I just spray a little bit of water on their feet, like so, which is a little bit more stressful, but it helps to get the shed off. I know, sweetheart. You're doing good, just be patient. And as you can see, she's walking in circles. That's pretty common in Enigmas who have Enigma syndrome. Hi, you coming out? You said, yes, please. I'm gonna take shed off her now.
Stuck shed can be stressful for all involved, so once your gecko is completely free of the stuck shed, put it back in its enclosure, let it just go chill in like its, you know, dark, warm hide, like let it be, and it should be fine after a few minutes, but it can be stressful, so just keep that in mind. Geckos with Enigma syndrome have to avoid stress at all costs, or else their symptoms can get really like out there. You know, if your gecko only shows minor symptoms, stress can make it show major symptoms, so you have to be careful of that. When it comes to your leopard gecko actually shedding, like if you come in on your Enigma syndrome gecko and it's in the middle of shed, first of all, it's very sad to watch, because I've seen my geckos actually bite their limbs trying to get the shed off instead of actually just biting the shed, and I've seen them really struggle. I've seen Shireen death roll upside down, just like spiraling around her enclosure. Shedding is very, very stressful for them. So if you happen to come across your gecko shedding, use discretion when deciding when to help. So if I come in and Sam is almost done shedding and she has a little bit left, I will just help her remove it. Sometimes I'll see a gecko that is like in the middle of shed, like they've only removed like part of their body, and I'll just help them finish. But you do not, absolutely do not want to do this for a gecko that does not have Enigma syndrome. And even if your gecko does have Enigma syndrome, I would only do this in the most severe of cases, because with Shireen, if she's in the middle of shed and I catch her, I can just put her in my hand and I can just peel her shed right off, and she won't even get stressed at all. I think it actually calms her down, because she's terrible when it comes to shedding. Like, she gets it all off. I don't know how. Like, most of the time she'll leave a couple toes sometimes, but she generally gets it all off, and she's literally upside down death rolling while she's doing it. I have no idea how she gets it all off. No idea. But if I see her in shed and she's death rolling and she's flailing all around her enclosure, I will hold her and help her get some of it off, just to remove some of that stress from her life. And she generally responds positively. Sam and Gilly, however, probably would not, and I don't help them with their shed because they respond to stress very strongly. So this is my gecko Shireen, and these clips, as you can see, are sped up because there are quite a few of them, so I wanted to make it as short as possible, but I also wanted to include as many as possible because I want to showcase how difficult it can be for Shireen or any severe Enigma syndrome gecko to shed. These clips, like the ones you saw of Sam and Gilly, were taken last year. I have been working on this video without realizing it for a long time because I took clips and saved them from forever ago. So, as you can see right now, she's trying to tear the shed off her body. That is Shireen's biggest problem, at least it was in the past. She doesn't have too much of a problem with that now. I'm not sure if that's just because she's calmed down a bit, or maybe she's healthier than she was when I first got her. I don't know, but she does seem to have less of a problem shedding, and she's generally calmer while shedding. In situations like Shireen's, I think that, using your discretion in terms of helping to remove stuck shed is a really good idea. When it comes to seeing Shireen struggle like this and death roll and have it stuck all over her body and not be able to get it off herself, yes, I definitely help her. I just hold her in my hand and real slowly and carefully remove the stuck shed. And again, like I said earlier, please use discretion if you're going to do this with your gecko. Obviously, I don't recommend this for just any gecko, and I don't even do it for Sam and Gilly. I only do it for Shireen. I must reiterate, do not help your gecko if it's in the middle of shedding, if it is not like a dire situation, if it's not like a situation of severe Enigma syndrome like Shireen has or Sam and Gilly. Do not do this for a healthy gecko. Do not do this unless your gecko is like advised to, like if your vet said, keep an eye on your gecko's shed because it has stitches or something. I would not assist otherwise, like absolutely not. It is more stressful for a healthy leopard gecko if you try and remove their shed than if you just let them shed on their own. Shedding is completely natural to them. It is something that they do all the time. Leopard geckos will shed like once a month, and if they're growing, they'll shed more than once a month. So you really have absolutely no need to help them unless it is like an emergency situation. I hope this video was helpful to you. Again, I must reiterate, if your gecko is not an Enigma morph, then your gecko does not have Enigma syndrome, and if it is having trouble shedding, then it could be from a number of other things, and you need to probably fix something in your enclosure to have healthy sheds. But please keep that in mind. I have had a lot of problems ever since making this series because everybody who thinks that their leopard gecko has trouble eating or trouble shedding or might have like one occasional stargaze, that all of a sudden their gecko is an Enigma and has Enigma syndrome when it does not. So please do not say your gecko is an Enigma if it isn't. So if I came off as a little bit severe, I apologize, but we are getting to the more passionate videos. As I said last year when I first uploaded the very first episode, I said that there would be some passionate videos, and boy are they coming! Anyways, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Hope you found it informational and insightful. Please check the links below for all kinds of stuff, including a donation link, a Patreon, merchandise, social media, and an email you can contact me at if you have any questions about whether or not your gecko might be an Enigma. Also, please subscribe and hit the notification bell and leave a like and leave a comment, and I will get back to you in the comments down below. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!